I think we're there. Hi.
Good morning. It's early.
How are you?
I'm just getting by. I'm here. So I guess we should introduce ourselves. So good morning, Melissa. This is Melissa McLeod. Melissa owns The Wool and the Floss in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, outside of Detroit. I am Megan Holmes. I own the Needlepoint Clubhouse here in St. Louis, Missouri, in gloomy St. Louis, Missouri today.
It's sunny here and cloudy there. That's rare.
I know, that's pretty funny. So together we do this joint venture called the Pointing It Out podcast, and we are delighted that people have been following along. And we're here to do our, what is this? About once a month we do this where we get together, I guess, as it turns out.
Yeah.
Every third week. So we're here to do our joint effort where we babble along, and I make fun of you for something, and then you make fun of me for something, and we just kind of, hope that people pick something up and learn something in the end. So here we are.
Yeah, nothing else. They're stitching while they're watching us and getting some
right. So. They've come to the end of the internet and Netflix and Amazon Prime shows, so hopefully they'll find us next. So.
Bottom of the barrel. There we are.
Right. That's right. So why don't you tell everybody what we decided to babble on about today?
So I've tongue-in-cheek phrased this team in hand, or are you team in hand or are you team frame? And honestly, we're going to get to the crux of it, which is I don't think you need to pick a team, and I don't think you think we need to pick a team. But the reason we decided to do this is whenever customers call us, and we have, thankfully, these days, so many remote customers. And so after they place an order, our standard question is, do you work in hand or do you work on a frame? And everyone who works in hand is like, oh, I work in hand. I'm like, stop it. That is not a judgment question. Mm-hmm. It's simply a logistical question, because we cut our canvases to fit the frames if you need to. But thankfully, as busy as we are, if I can save myself 10 minutes and not cut a canvas to fit the frame, I want to save myself 10 minutes. So,
well, or even if you're not cutting the canvas, the question is, do we need to throw in stretcher bars for you?
True. Although most people who work on frames, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but they might have just a few in their stash.
That is something to behold, my friend. That is something to behold. Unfortunately, my wine bag is holding wine.
We'll talk about the wine bag later. But anyway, so we just thought that there's so much, I guess, for newer stitchers, like, should I work on a frame? Shouldn't I work on a frame? Why is it good? Why is it bad? And there's pros and cons to both methods, just like with everything else in life. So I just thought it'd be fun to talk about that. So I think
it's great. I think it's a great idea.
Both of us do some of both, and we pick our poison based on different sets of circumstances, depending on the canvas and what we're going to do with it and what mood we're in and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely, those jerseys where people like half of their house is like the fan of one team and half of the house
divided.
I'm like the house divided. I do a little bit of both, and there's reasons I think to do both. So,
yeah.
So what should we? What are we going to talk about?
I think so. Many people who have stitched forever, or who were taught by someone who stitched forever, I think, learned how to stitch in hand. I learned how to stitch when I was 7 years old, and I did learn fancy stitches right out of the gate. However, I stitched in hand. So.
Right. Well, and for me, the first, I don't know, I guess I could call it 2 years of my stitching life, I did belts, because I thought here in St. Louis, belts are huge. And I thought that's what you did when you needlepointed, was stitch belts. And so I traveled with belts everywhere. And I know a couple of people that use different types of solutions for tacking down belts, but I never did. I had them all rolled up, and I don't even have one here in front of me, honestly. But yeah, so same, off frames, off bars.
So the people that are solely in the in-hand group, I think, are mainly because they learned the sewing or scooping method, and it's really a ton faster. I've yet to master it well, I have to say, because that's not how I learned. Like I do it now, but I tend to only do it uphill and not downhill if I'm doing a true basket weave, because
that's exactly
my own limitations.
Is that another episode altogether, scooping? I get a ton of questions about scooping. What is scooping? Why do you do it? I happen to have my rolled up. I always have one rolled up 13 count, mostly basket weave project. Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, lately, this is what I've been doing, like at night while I drink my wine and watch Netflix / our podcast.
Because you're so tired by the end of the day that's
This is what I'm doing.
the
Yeah.
most relaxing therapeutic thing for you.
Yeah, and so scooping, I think we should talk about scooping real quick.
Yeah, for sure.
You can manage it. So scooping basically is just trying to pick up 1.5 stitches at the same time. Wouldn't you say? I mean,
That's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah.
you're doing a stitch. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this on here. So you're doing a stitch and you're anticipating where
So you're going in and out in the same motion. You're not like
exactly
pulling
right.
and pushing and pulling and pushing. You're swooping and scooping, right?
And you're always staying on top. So you're gonna get your, sorry, I'll explain this in a minute. That's kind of in the way, but you're getting that stitch in, and then your needle is direct where you need to then go back, like the bottom of the half cross. Is that making sense to anybody?
Let's hope so. It makes sense to me.
Can you see it? I don't know if you can see it or not.
Well, there's a couple little videos on YouTube. If you just search needlepoint scooping, you'll see, and I can't remember who's done them, but that they have their camera set in a better format than we do for them to see. But
so for me, for two things with scooping, one is it begins to hurt. I use my middle finger to like press it through.
right.
So back on the I think we did tools and gizmos and gadgets or whatever. So I use that leather thimble to press that through.
Right.
So, but I think that the biggest issue, in my opinion, with scooping is keeping your tension. And that's why I think when people say, oh, I scoop and that's not great, whatever, I think it's just I think you can torque your canvas pretty easily. And that, again, is an argument for using stretcher bars. But if you're a scooper and you've always done it and you want to whip through a project, especially a background like what I'm doing here, then, scoop away, I just tend to try to keep it so that I'm not like ripping through it as I go.
And blocking will fix some of those tension issues.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And again, there's no police and this is for fun and there's no reason not to scoop.
Well, so where I generally don't care what people do. The only time I have two reasons I've pushed people to use a frame. One, if they come in and they say, my canvas is completely out of whack, what can I do about it? Then I will push them towards a frame. I'm not going to criticize anyone. If theirs is out of whack, if they have the patience and the extra $15 for us to block it, so be it, that's fine. But where I really do push people, and I have a gal who watches this quite a bit, my friend Becky, and then I had another gal named Susie a few years ago who were stitching so much that their hands were hurting them. Like they were all cramped up, and like literally this cute little lady, she was probably in her 70s, and every year she stitches a custom piece for her 5 dinner couples, like that they get together on New Year's Eve. And so she was madly stitching these 5 things that said, why not, which I loved. And she came in after the 3rd one and she literally was like trying to sign her name and she like couldn't even sign her name on the credit card slips. And I said, Susie, please, please, please let me put you on a frame. And the reason being is that I think, I'm trying to find something that's smaller on a frame.
Something smaller.
It gives you something to hold on to. So you're not clutching like this. You tend to like be mushy.
You're like holding the canvas out of the way as you're holding it up.
Right. So you have something to hold on to. So I said, it's like a $7 investment. If it doesn't work, throw them out, bring it back in. I'll take it off the bars for you. Like, I want to make this as easy as possible on you. She came back in a week later and it was like her hands were like dancing in the air. Like she's life. So if people are starting to have like, I don't know if that's technically carpal tunnel. I don't know what that really is, but if their hands are starting to bother them, I think that's a really good time to try a frame. And you might have to adjust your stitching style. And Becky, my current friend and customer, did. And she's like, and now every canvas she comes in, she wants framed. And she's like, it's the best thing I ever did for my hand health.
Well, and the other thing, because I think what you're saying is that you're kind of like, especially if you were in the middle of the canvas, you're working to keep this canvas out of your way and working to do, so we do have a little solution for that. I don't know, do you carry those little clips? I don't happen to have any in front of me.
These, that's on my canvas, this kind of thing.
Yeah, well, we have a little bit of different ones, but yeah, yes.
Or, I mean, they clip it together. Oh, ow. These are
Those babies
powerful.
But so like to keep your canvas rolled for you on either end, right?
Right.
Is that what you use that for, or do you just use
I
your
do.
keep it?
I roll it mainly just, especially when I'm working on belts. I really like these because I can't stand that long flowing thing flopping everywhere, and I'm afraid it's going to get dirty. I feel like this helps keep it cleaner, you know, all that kind of
Right. Ours are, darn it, I don't want to run out of the screen like I usually do to you, but they're little, and I could show them later, but they're little plastic. We have two sizes. So one's larger for the larger canvases, and then we have the micro clips that are good for the belts. But yeah, same thing. So it would keep you from having to like clench that closed.
Yeah, I don't know why this was, because the piece that the gal was working on was just small, the one who could barely write. So anyways, it just seemed, that seems to be whenever anyone says my hands are killing me, I might have to stop stitching for a while. I'm like, no, let's find a solution. None of us.
Yeah, exactly right. We don't want to take stitching away. No way.
So I can't say it's a miracle solution for everyone, but for these two gals, it was super helpful. So that is when I will push people to use a frame.
Gotcha.
And, you know, they've got cons because you can't sew with them. You know, people sometimes say they're heavy, they're not as portable. Like there's definitely downsides to a frame, but there's a lot of upsides to a frame.
What do you mean when you say you're sewing?
Sewing and scooping. So people who stitch like, so scooping I feel like is the 2000s term for it.
Okay.
Like
okay.
Little older ladies, sorry if I'm offending anyone, but you know, like the people like in their 70s and 80s, they'll say, but I sew. That's what they.
I see. Okay. Well, I'm glad I clarified because I did not know what you were talking about. I haven't heard anybody say that before.
Yeah.
So. I automatically assume when people say they're sewing on a needlepoint canvas that they don't know what they're talking about because we don't sew a needlepoint canvas.
No, that's called like the sewing method because that's how you
Got
sew. Like if you're sewing on a button, it's maybe not a button. If you're sewing on like a hem, it's a continuous method, just like with the scooping.
Got it. This is what I do to my little kid. This is what the kids do on Zoom when they get, you know, got it.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So then let's talk about frames because there's a bunch of different varieties of frames. And I think for people who haven't used frames, they get a little overwhelmed by that. And there's nothing to be overwhelmed by.
There is nothing to be overwhelmed by. I think that the biggest trick, and you alluded to it earlier, the thing that to start working on a frame, people I think get really confused. And honestly, I did at the very beginning too, is what size of a frame do I need?
Oh,
right?
Good point. Yes.
So, you know, it seems simple, but if you measure your frame just a teensy bit too large, your canvas won't fit on it, right? So you have to measure from the, you know, end to end. And if you go like, so this, I don't know, let's just, oh, well, I label mine too, by the way.
Good girl.
But so I think this is a 6 because these are turned inside out. But if this is a 6, if I had gotten a 7, it would fall through. I wouldn't be able to tack it on, right? So
you have to trim the canvases too, because a lot of times they're like 7.5. So you take 1/4 of an inch off of either side. If you're completely OCD like me, some people just.
I was about to say, so, oh boy, get the heebie-jeebies out. I have a little extra here. I just kind of fold mine around. And sometimes if it's too big, I tack it around the edge too.
Oh, sorry. Maybe on the left-hand side since I'm right-handed. Maybe.
Right. Okay. So yes. So measuring first, right? So you measure the outer edges of your canvas, and tape does add about, I don't know, like
it adds 1/4 of an inch side to side when you do it, you know, on both sides ish.
Exactly. So 1/4. Did I just say that? Is that right?
I don't know. I don't know where you were going. You seemed like you were pausing, so I was filling in the blanks. Sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I haven't had enough coffee yet. I got the biggest one they sell, but I haven't gotten it all in yet. The only one I get up at 6:30 or earlier for, Melissa. Let me just tell you.
Thank you.
Okay. You know, I used to do, when I did my live things, I did them at night. Because then I was like ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, I'm tucking myself in.
Right, we digress.
Yes.
So measuring, I think, is a thing. But go
And they're
ahead.
sold in sets of 2. So like yours is like a 6x8, maybe 6x7, whatever that is. So you'd
But
get
they're not in half. They don't come in half. It's full inches. So you have to determine which full, kind of like, when shoe sizes only come in a.
right. So that's where the trimming comes in.
Right. Okay. So, and I don't know, when somebody says, should I get minis or should I get, you carry both, right? So let's go back. So there are there's regulars and minis.
Yep. And the minis are a 1/2 inch wide and the regulars are an inch wide, correct? I think that's right.
That's a good question. I'll go with you on that.
We're going to say that because I think that's right.
So when someone says to you, what should I do? Which one? I mean, I kind of have my stock answer, but I would like to hear what your stock answer is.
And I think they might be different.
Yes.
So
go ahead.
My stock answer is I would tell you every time to get the minis if your project is 18 inches or under, because the minis only come up to 18 inches. And I think they start at 5s. Do they start at 4s?
I only have 5s.
I think they start at 5s. So they go from 5 to 18. And then the big ones go from 5, although I don't carry them here until 10s, until 28, I think. 26, 28, something like that.
So we have 24, 26, 28, because at a certain point,
28 is big as they get.
They only make them in the even.
So I do the minis because it's back to that hand health thing. They're so much lighter weight. Like I'll have people come in and pick this up and pick this up, and this is twice as big. So guess what? It's twice as heavy.
It's true.
I just think it's easier. Can you tell I've had issues with carpal tunnel? Like I'm very cognizant of this because I had carpal tunnel when I had my twins, and it was awful. It was awful. So I'm just super cognizant of that. So that's why I push that. And the only downside to me to the minis is because they're thinner, they're not quite as sturdy. And I've had a couple of the longer ones, like the 16, 17, 18s, snap in half. But it's usually only when, like, let's say my husband's packing the car and he crams something in the car. So I mean, under normal.
You let your husband pack your needlepoint? That is the first problem.
Yeah. It's not the preferred method, but it happens occasionally where you cram something in the car to go to the cottage. So anyway, I have not had them break under normal use, but under husband spousal intervention, they can crack occasionally, but it's a big $4 to replace this broken side. So whatever.
Yeah. And I'm with you. Like this isn't necessarily an investment. So my answer, which one, I'll say, well, have you already bought some? Because if you've started your collection down the mini road, and if you've started your collection down the regular road, why not try to be consistent?
True.
So that when you take your project off the bars, then you can say, oh, great, I already have 8 minis. Because we should point out that you can't, these two guys don't work well together.
And you should probably, so if no one's ever used a frame, they come notched like this. And I've literally had people who are like perplexed by this, but they just fit together. And then obviously you'd add 2 more sides. Every now and then, if I do this when I'm really sleepy, I'll like pop it together backwards, and then it's all wonky and whatever. Like you'll realize that it's backwards because it doesn't flat. Because when it's done right, it's flat on all. When it's done right, it's flat on both sides.
Right. I've also been known to be in a hurry and put the 2 of one size together and then the 2 of the other size together and then go, wait a minute, that doesn't work.
So I've actually had people though who have always had I call them the fat bars, because I'm always like big holes, little holes, fat, skinny, like I don't call things the right names. Kelly Uncle is a good customer of mine. And I had she only had the fat ones, because it used to be that the mini ones didn't exist. I think the minis came into existence maybe 8 years ago, something like that. And so she had a big collection of these because she stitched for a long time. And I said, well, why don't you try the skinny ones? And for smaller projects, she's like, oh my God, I'm so glad I moved, because it's better on her wrists. So
the other thing, and it's not like this. I mean, I feel like we're making this sound like it's like this, Say it again.
national decision.
Yeah, and it's not, but these are just all the things that, so what I was going to say, the other thing is to kind of think about what you're going to be, how are you going to be utilizing them, right? So I prefer the fat bars, as you would call them, with my frame, with my stand, my floor stand. I just feel like it's sturdier in the stand, and it clamps down easier. These are just a little bit smaller. So so again, like if you're a person that always uses your stand, whether it's your lap stand or your floor stand or whatever, I would suggest these. So again, like when you come in and you say, do you need Mars? I'm not going to ask you 85,000 questions, but if you're trying to figure out what you want to do, it's worth kind of thinking through the process a little bit, right?
Right.
So, so yeah. The other thing that we have here that you don't, and I don't think you do, is the frame locks.
We don't, because they only work on the fat bars.
And that's what I was going to say.
Because I don't sell as many of the fat bars. It's not something I brought in.
And
awesome.
This is a rather new product. And, you know, we all love new products in the needlepoint. We're like, oh, what's something new? So I was like, oh, let's get these. And then I was like, well, wait, why do I need them? I don't get it.
Well, it's also a new product with a really good backstory.
Well, there's a great backstory. It's a young man who designed them. I don't know how old he is. He's young.
I think he's like 14.
I was going to say 16, but okay, yeah. So
somewhere in there, somewhere in high school, doing far more than I was screwing around in high school, and you know. Whatever.
Exactly. These kids, yeah, it's amazing. That's probably a whole different podcast, would be entrepreneurs. But anyway, at first I didn't really understand them, but to your collection point, so these guys, as you mentioned earlier, these frames can be reused, but they're not like made of steel, right? They're made of balsa wood. So they get loose after a while. Right. So I happened to pull these out. They've been used and abused and had 100 different things put in them, and they were truthfully just a little wobbly. So I stuck these in, and they stick in with tacks, which we can talk about in a second.
Same tacks that you use on the front of your canvas? Exactly
right. Yep. And it keeps it squared up, because the whole purpose of this is to make sure that your canvas is squared up so that it comes out square when your stitching is finished, right? So
well, and it probably keeps because the frame's not having that little bit of motion it can have, because it's keeping it more stable, it's probably keeping it more taut on the front, which is also the other point, is to keep it super taut, especially if you're doing laid stitches or
specialty stitches. Exactly right. Exactly. So if you're a person who has, I don't, and again, I don't want to insult the inventor of these, because he might have a whole different idea. I don't see a great need for this when you very first put your bars together, but it's absolutely 100% awesome if you're trying to get life out of your old bars that you've used a lot and they get a little wonky. So
right.
Just want to point that out.
Yeah. Good. So we talked a little bit about how you assemble the frames, and then I think there's two different ways to put your pieces on. So hold yours up again.
Okay.
Have those little tacks, which we sell as well, but I inherited a process from my old owner. So, you know, you inherited these things, do you keep doing them? Mine, I put on with staples. And and you laugh at me because we do this all day long and it's really noisy in my shop. We have a staple gun. If you're going to dig into
talk about carpal tunnel.
You're going to dig into the workbench at your house. Standard staple gun is great. Make sure it's clean because it's touching your canvas. But what you really want to make sure is these are the JT21 staples. So they're like light staples. They're only, here, I'll show you guys. What drives me crazy is occasionally someone will come in and they're like, look, I stapled my own canvas, and they're using like the fat upholstery weight staples. So these are like, I don't know if you can see that or not.
They were planning on having their canvas on the bars for a
life. They're nice and skinny. So the bottom line is make sure you get the skinnier staples for the staple gun, because it is impossible to get those big fatties out of there.
So do you do the way I'm sorry, I'm acting like a dummy, because we do have a lot of people who use, staples, but I don't ever assemble the staples. So I do.
So it's the same function. Like if I were putting this on bars, I would.
But do you go here and here, like you do the 4 points?
So first of all, please note how carefully my canvas does not stick over the edges, because I'm completely OCD. But yeah, so we line them up and I do the middle staple, the middle staple, middle staple, middle staple. And then some people work their way out. I tend to then do the corners because then I can pull on it. And this has been on here for a while, so it's a little wonky because this is, you all may recognize this project from a while ago. I think Kimberly Ann did this stitch along 18 months ago, maybe. So it's a little wobbly. So it could be retightened, but I think it's easier to retighten them with the tacks in some ways.
So the tacks just pop out rather easily. And again, I just kind of grip. But somebody told me, and I find this technique to work really well. I guess I should have had one that we could put on bars. But so I do, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock.
Me too, yeah.
Work either clockwise or counterclockwise, doesn't really matter. But I begin to like pull and tack, 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 going all the way around so that it because the idea is to get a really good grip on it and get it tight.
And I think that's the more accepted way. Like I said, I do the middles and then I pull the corners and then I do the rest. So your way is probably more accurate, but whatever,
I think as long as you're getting like a nice taut grip, I guess, I don't know how else to call it, then you're fine. Now, the one thing I see people doing, and now speaking of being OCD, this would drive me crazy. Some people, I think, don't use very many tacks. So they'll throw like a couple here and there.
Defeat the purpose.
Kinda. I mean, if you like working on a frame, that's one thing. But if it doesn't have like a taut, it would just be kind of annoying. It would be kind of flapping around.
Right.
The other thing I see people do sometimes, and again, there are no police, and if it doesn't bother you, then it sure doesn't bother me. But like maybe having open space. So what if my canvas was only like this size and you're only going to tack here and here?
Right.
And I see people do that on belts too. Like they'd take this and they'd tack a belt and just do an section.
Yeah, but isn't that the nature of if the belt's skinnier than 5 inches, because 5 are the smallest bars?
Right. So there's open, you can't tack it on both sides is what I'm saying. So some people enjoy doing that too. And again, it doesn't really matter, but the idea is that you get a really good tacked down, taut canvas here. And to me, I don't know, the reason why I do this is so that I can have both hands free.
Right. So yeah, that was one of the things that I also tell people is it inherently, if you add in a couple other tools, sorry, I'm getting some stuff out of the way, gives you a third hand. And the only reason you need a third hand, well, it's 2 reasons. If you were a sewer and you want to go fast, if you have it on a frame, and I don't know if I can show this off very well, you can obviously invest in like a floor stand like you and I both sell, but that's a big investment. Like that is not for the person it's their first project. I mean,
correct.
You need to know you are a stitcher. But we sell frame weights, and I think you guys do too, right?
We do, yep.
So they're little like.
I want to get mine because mine's extra cute.
Oh, and mine's not. Jeez.
Well, yours is cute, but.
So they're full of what's inside of these. I can't even remember. The different ones are full of different things. Bottom line is it's like a giant bean bag with something non-organic in it.
Correct.
And it's heavy. So you can put your canvas on the edge of your table and rest this on the corner. Oh, there you go. Aren't you smart? Yes. So then inherently you can just be doing regular needlepoint stitch and pulling up with one hand and pulling down with the other. So you have one hand on either side of the canvas if you're just doing the traditional needlepoint stitch. Or if you're doing things like a bullion knot or a French knot, you suddenly can work with both hands and you're not having to hold onto the canvas too. So
yeah, like this has ribbon work in it, right? Which you have helped me with. And yeah, it gives you the opportunity to kind of manipulate that ribbon a little bit and put your, kind of like, instead of like trying to hold and like trying to, it just doesn't work.
The day I did French knots, not on a frame, and had little red dots all over my thigh because I didn't think the tapestry needle would hurt my skin.
That was so funny.
So yeah, so you go from, the stand is obviously a major investment. This is, this is a 3-digit investment. This is a low 2-digit investment. So,
and this would be a way for you to determine whether you like working on a frame. Well, also, I feel like people who are trying to get into new stitches, there are some stitches that very easily work in hand. Mosaics, you're over 1 over 2, brick. But anytime you're trying to do something where the stitches are longer or something, or like you said, French knots, or I hate to suggest to people who work in hand like a French knot, because it's just going to be frustrating,
Right.
because you have that extra hand. So this is just a great way, like you said, $8 maybe for the frame and the tax, and then I don't even know how much we sell these for, $20 or so. I don't know.
Yeah.
And like you said, instead of the stand, and it's worth the extra money if you're going to try to work those extra stitches, just to try to give yourself a good setup. It's kind of like you get frustrated doing carpentry work at your house because you don't have the perfect types of saws and all that stuff. It's just
The right tools make the job enjoyable.
Exactly right.
For sure.
Yep.
Okay, so other kinds of frames. So that's the bulk of what we sell for frames, I think, for you as well. Oh, we didn't talk about one other thing. Sometimes people, so we were talking about our frames, and Megan and I both mount our frames in what I would call the traditional way. I don't know if there's a way where the canvas is on top. There's a camp of people that like to work in the well. I don't know who created that statement. My friend Gay is one who works in the well. So what that means is, in her case, this is the front of her canvas, and so she's working in the well. So she likes her canvas to be mounted, in my traditional view, backwards, but it makes a lot of sense. I've tried it. I don't totally love it, but I think it's just because I'm a creature of habit. It's not because it's not a great way to do things. So she feels that by doing it this way, she still has all the benefits of working on a frame, but she feels like her piece stays a little fresher and cleaner, because when you're working on it, if you're holding the frame or whatever, nothing's touching. You're holding the frame. Sorry, nothing's touching the frame. If you put your frame weight on it,
Yep.
it's only touching the wood. And she feels when you turn it over, it's really easy to bury the threads because you don't have to worry about running into the edge of the frame.
It's a straight edge, yeah. So
the other thing she said, sorry, one last thing. She said, like in this case, she wanted to see how her embellishments would look on Henry as she went. And you and I would always tell our stitchers, don't do your embellishments until the last step, because they're going to get in the way, they're going to get wobbly. She feels like she can do her embellishments as she goes, and then they don't get disrupted.
Because it stays protected.
Yes.
So. The other thing I've heard people say, I don't know if you said this or not, I was trying to listen, but my mind started wandering. Did you talk about like the tacks and or the staples can tend to sometimes grab the thread? So like if you're working, so like you're going along and like say you're using like Splendor or something, and every once in a while I won't get these. By the way, I use a mallet. I use a rubber mallet.
Okay.
And that would work for staples too, to go back over the top and just like pop them.
Well, the staples generally, if you like, I think people doing it at home might have an issue with their staples being wonky here, because we all do them all day long. Our staples are very flush. But I do use
go to your LNS and have them do your staples.
I do use tacks when I'm at home, because if I got out the staple gun at midnight, my 9 o'clock to bed husband might kill me. So.
Right. But anyway, so these tend to, they work their way up, and every once in a while, a little like strand of Splendor or something will get stuck on there. So I can see why having it under here, although you're coming up and down, I don't know. But one thing I wanted to point out that I do that this has absolutely, pointing it out.
You don't even know you're being cheesy. Go ahead.
No, I know. Geez. Story of my life, believe me. I do this, and this really has nothing to do with working on or off bars, but I just thought I'd mention it since you were, because I give this trick to people all the time. So this is
your leftover lunch?
Gross. No. Press and Seal. I was trying to think of the Saran Wrap brand, but it's the Press and Seal. And it sticks so nicely to your canvas. And you can cut it in little pieces. And it also just like kind of comes off without harming anything.
Right.
And so, the old like do your light colors first or whatever. So I actually was using this on here because this light blue is so light. And I just put this on here and it protects it as I'm stitching.
Good.
Whoops, I had the wrong side. Sorry.
Stick your side down.
there's a sticky side and a non-sticky side. But anyway, I think that would help Gay with keeping her thing clean. If you're going to use the traditional method, you could throw on this little press and seal and it would keep your clean embellishments stabilized. So
I like that. I like that. Yeah. So that's working well. And then there's a couple other kind of frames that I think are worth a mention. I had a customer who just purchased this gorgeous Ann Fisher
backgammon board.
But as you can see, it's very, very large. And she was like, there's no way I can work on a giant frame. Because sometimes, and again, I'll pull out this piece just because it's big. Something this big, it can get a little uncomfortable to get your arms around everything and whatever. So there is an option of a scroll frame, and scroll frames are also very reusable. Definitely a little bit more of an investment than the traditional frames. But this is the scroll frame. Whoops, this will come, we'll talk about that in a second. So you put this together, you buy the scroll bars, which are the long ones with the fabric tabs, and then you buy the end bars. So one investment, two investment. And this end bar determines how much of your canvas is going to be showing and working.
And then you can buy the long pieces all in different lengths, right?
Correct. So this is obviously very long to support this canvas. And what the stitcher will do is she will baste, or some people use straight pins. I don't know if you have another method, but they baste the canvas to that fabric. Sorry, I'm not showing this very well.
No, that's fine. Yep.
So you want to center it with a, equal amount on either side. And most importantly, then the opposite end, I'm not going to flip it over because it'll be too hard to get to. The opposite end goes down here. And then your canvas is rolled on the top and rolled on the bottom, and you move it along. So these are 10-inch bars. So like 8 inches, you've got 8 inches of working space across here.
So I'm going to ask another question, and I don't have any idea how long we're going, but sorry. So that's a wooden scroll frame.
Yes, this is from Kay's Creations.
Kay's Creations. And so they have a stand, a Kay's Creations stand that works in, correct?
Yes, although you can get a scroll frame attachment for a System 4 as well.
That's where I was going. So the System 4 is just slightly different, but it's the metal.
Right. I've actually even had people put the sidebars
in their
regular frame clamp.
That's where I was going to. Yeah,
it's a little unstable but the special attachments, another investment. So,
but if you find that you are a scroll frame lover,
yeah,
it would be worth the investment
for sure.
Type of floor stand you have for those end bars, and then the mid pieces aren't as costly.
Right.
And there's also, can't you also buy, and I have some customers who have found these, I can't find a wholesale source for them, but like a little lap scroll frame that's all in one thing. I don't know.
I'm not
stockings and things. Okay.
I don't know.
But anyway, so.
Yeah, so scroll frames, what I sell a lot of here is the belt scroll frame. I don't know if that's
there with all the narrow one. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's very popular. Again, it's not an $8 investment. I think it's like a $55 investment or something like that. But if you're someone who blows through belts, totally worth it.
Yeah.
And if you're doing a bigger awkward piece, it's nice to have. To me, the downside is if you are someone who does a lot of more dimensional stitches, I feel like it gets mushed on the roll.
You don't really want it to be rolled up, correct?
Right. So, but it's always that, which is better for you? Do you want the scroll that's easier to work with, or are you willing to reach down in it's getting to the middle of the canvas on a bigger piece? On a traditional frame is tricky. So you just pick which one feels better to you, and there's no right or wrong answer.
Right. One more thing, and I think maybe you were going here, I'm not sure, but so we just both happen to carry this brand. I'm not sure that there's another brand of this style of the ones that kind of fit together. From what I know, it's this, and then for the scroll frame, there's this Kay's Creation company, and that's the wooden, and then the System 4. But there's one other type of stretcher bars, right?
Are we going to Evertights? Is that what you mean?
Well, I just didn't want to. I didn't want to be remiss because we don't.
I just pulled this down to talk about it. So this one.
Oh, great. Okay, great.
This is on a frame called an Evertight. And the only reason I think it's not worth spending much time on this right now is currently, like in the last 6 months or so, all my shop friends that carried these can't get them. And I don't know.
If it's COVID related.
But I don't know why. I'm sure it is something to do with 2020 and all the lovely supply chain issues we have.
Yeah.
But I don't know that for sure. So don't get too attached to these. If you don't own them, you might not be able to get them right now. But they're pretty phenomenal. They are more expensive, and I should have done a little research on the special mechanism. But these to me look like, if you're a traditional frame user, you're like, those don't even fit together right. But that's actually how they're supposed to fit together. And you can see those little screw holes right there. There's a special tool that's can't remember what it's called, but
it looks like a T-bar. Like it's kind of got like a thing,
like a blue handle with a little some sort of wrenchy do in there, and. So I know, I always have these technical terms.
I like it.
Large canvas. I am a little embarrassed. I started this probably 10 years ago, and I need to get back to it because I still love it, but it's been sitting in my closet for 10 years, and you can barely see, it wiggles just a little bit. And if I had my handy dandy tool here, literally all I would do would be turn like a quarter turn in each of those things, and it tightens.
Oh, that's why there's movement in there, because it expands and contracts.
Yes. Yeah. It's really fascinating. So the downside is they're more expensive. The other downside is this is really heavy. And I don't know, they're heavier because they're thicker. You can see that they're even thicker than the traditional ones.
Yep.
So they're heavy. So if you're working on a stand, who cares? If you're holding on to this, it's
a lot.
But they really are kind of a miracle. But you can't really buy them now, so we won't.
The other thing I want to point out really quick, God, I'm not even trying to be punny. You have quilter's tacks on that.
Yes, those are the grand tacks, which we normally sell these littler guys because they fit better on the regular frames, but those big fat guys are great on the heavier frames.
So we have some customers who use these and ask for them. That's why we stock them. I don't know. They're bigger. They might be stronger.
I think on that wider frame, they make more sense because they're more in sync, or whatever I'm trying to say, in proportion with the frame.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, that makes sense. The other thing that has been around for a long time, and I found them, and I was bequeathed some stitching by a dear friend. But anyway, have you ever seen these, or do you know anything about these?
Mm-mm.
So people call these, they're Japanese brass tacks. And I've heard them called like Jap tacks, as they're like kind of just like Japanese tacks. People just say it quickly. But anyway, I think they're stronger. I think they're sturdier. They're a little more expensive. I've used both just to test them out. And I think we again, somebody said, where are those Japanese tacks? I love those. So we sourced these and we carry these too. The cool thing about these is that they come in this really neat little, this slides open. It's just another type of tax that we sell. So ask about
the ends not bend as much, because these, if you use the little tool included, they tend to come out straight. But if you just wonk your canvas off, the ends all bend and you have to throw them out. These you can reuse, but I bet you could use those longer if you're getting them paid for.
And the tool is actually in the, you see that?
You've got the same thing in there, yeah.
It's the same thing, but it's stronger because it's metal.
Right.
I do find these to be a little bit stronger, negligible, I guess, but a little bit stronger. And you're right. You know, is your tack pack open?
No.
Somebody's asked me what the blue tool is. So that blue little tool, the one end is supposed to be used to press them down. And then the other end is there to like kind of scoop them out.
And scoop them out so they come up straight. And so you don't bend the ends of the tack, so you can reuse them. Because you can reuse these to a certain degree, but after a while they kind of give up the ghost. But
yeah, for sure. So is it a good time to talk about how you get your staples out, or do you have another?
Oh, I didn't bring my little staple. I have this black staple remover thing. It's got a handle and the thing. And I usually honestly get a couple out of the corner and then I just pull it off.
Okay.
You kind of have a heart attack, but it doesn't do anything to the canvas. I mean,
sure.
The finisher cuts off the corners anyways when they're done, so who cares?
Right. I just have a hard time with staples sometimes, but if you've got the right tool and you can get up under
Yeah, I can grab that really fast at the end.
Sorry.
Let's talk about, we've taken up a lot of people's time, so we're gonna talk really fast. I brought this out earlier. This is like the wine bag you get from your grocery store. But somewhere along the line, I picked up this tech. It is the perfect way to organize and store your stretcher bar. So that's
It's
your free
awesome.
thing for the day. Everyone has one of these in their closet.
And I see what you do. The same thing I do is I write the number on the
on the end.
With just a Sharpie, and then I tend to try to rubber band the two together because forever I'm trying to. Yep. There you go.
So there.
But so that's just a nice way to store them.
What other little things do we have? You've talked about the frame locks. We've talked about frame weights. We've talked about the stand. We both have tons of needle minders. So if you're working on a frame, it's really great to have something that holds your magnets in place. Sometimes on bigger projects, I have a couple of them. And I know you have boards and boards of them. I have some here. So here, I'll just grab this because mine's magnetized to something. Oops, sorry. So, lots and lots of things to choose from. So you can go from like jewelry for your needlepoint down to, I bet you have these too. Do you have these little needle blings? They're a lot smaller and less expensive. And then I think you and I both do this too. For someone who's just like, just starting out and never used a frame, we just sell a couple of these earth magnets just on our business card because they're super inexpensive. They do the trick. They're not quite as pretty, but who cares? But after a while, you end up getting like the magnet to match your project and all that stuff when you get.
But really quick, so just to mention, so the reason why you really need a magnet on a frame is because when you're doing your sewing technique, you usually just kind of run your needle in, but this is so taut. Exactly.
You can do this in hand, but not on a frame.
You can't do that on a frame. I've seen some people do this, but invariably you will lose that needle. So
you can even put your scissors on them. There's my scissors on there.
Well, and I was gonna say that too. So those little tiny magnets are great, but I tend to have like my laying tool and whatever.
I think we both are kind of cognizant of other people's budgets, and we like to have like entry level items because if they try a frame and a magnet and they hate it, if they bought the 2 sets for $5, no big deal.
Not a big deal.
They bought the $30 magnet. I don't think we have $30 magnets, but you get my point. If you buy the more expensive ones, silly.
Correct.
And our other new joint discovery, we're both wearing ours, is from my friend Molly, the Crystal Coast Stitcher, I think is her handle on Instagram.
Okay.
She introduced me to these ironically because we're a knitting shop, and this is really a knitting item. This is designed for knitters.
Okay.
But if you are working in hand, boom, there's the little scissors on there. You and I both.
Well, I'm obsessed. I love this thing. So I know this looks goofy, and truthfully, small scissors are much better for this.
Yeah, well, you and I both carry these. Yours are on their way to you.
Yep.
Like 8 colors.
Exactly. So the little scissors are awesome for this thing. But even if, like, I could throw scissors in each of my project bags and I sit on the end of a couch. I know you love to sit at a table to stitch. I sit on the end of a couch and I'm always losing stuff down the couch. So like when you're sitting and just stitching away, this isn't going to hurt anything. Like I'm not going to walk around with this.
Right.
But it just keeps it right, like with me. So I know where it is. Like otherwise I'm like setting it on the side of the couch and the dog's knocking it over and blah, blah, blah. But I have everything here and I like to keep my snag nabbit. And sometimes an extra needle is great because, again, I'm losing it. But anyway, I love this thing. And I think it's better I kind of think it's better for this because I tend to put lots of magnets on these.
Right.
I can keep it all right there. But anyway.
I love it too.
The maker's keep.
I haven't brought one home yet for myself because I can't decide what color.
Goofball.
I know, isn't that ridiculous?
Buy yourself two.
I'm like pink, blue. No, but today look at orange. I mean, come on, it matches my dress.
I couldn't agree more. Mine matches my earrings. So I actually have chartreuse, or I don't know what it's actually called. It's
that's
like
duck egg on. Chartreuse is the one you own.
I own, and then today I just wanted to match, so I pulled one out.
So they come with a little protective thing on there. So we haven't destroyed these for anyone else's use.
My protective thing is still on.
Okay.
Oh wait, but did we tell people it's like a little snap bracelet?
Oh yeah,
And do you know that it also has a tape measure on it?
I did, because that's the ruler for the knitter especially. So, and it can also, if you're using a pattern or if you're someone who does counted pieces, you can lay it, because now I just snapped it so it stays flat. Like this isn't flopping around. So you can lay it down on your pattern, or the knitters would lay it on their pattern to keep track of where they were. So like, here's my notes from our meeting. I could slide this down. So if you're a counted piece and you're working from a chart,
Oh,
you
cool.
could lay it flat on there. So that is, again, this was invented by knitters, but it is so useful for us stitchers too. So,
I love it. I just love it.
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant.
well, I think we've used up a lot of people's time, but I hope we said something worthwhile. If nothing else, people know how to put to use one of those wine bags, and that's free. So.
You know, little nuggets everywhere.
Well, we all got to share, right? So,
That's right.
yeah, so it was great spending time with you. If those that are watching haven't subscribed to us on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. That helps other stitchers find us. I have lots of people asking us where the podcast is, so that really helps. The more people
YouTube.
subscribe, the more they find us. So we appreciate that. Anything else we haven't said?
I think I've said plenty.
Thank you. Well, good. Well, it was great spending time with you, and
You too. Have a great day.
we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Oh,